Ethan Cole still remembered the way sunlight hit Mia's hair that morning, the way she smiled across the kitchen island, coffee mug in hand, pretending nothing in the world could touch them. They looked perfect. Two people who had built a life of comfort and quiet ambition. Yet something beneath the surface had begun to hum with unease. Her late nights at the office, new dresses for client meetings, the distracted way she said, "Love you," as if it were punctuation instead of feeling. Ethan tried to ignore the hollow echo in her voice, convincing himself that every marriage had seasons. But when she kissed his cheek and hurried out, her perfume lingered long after she left, a trace of warmth that carried a chill. That scent would return to him later, each time he wondered when love had started to lie. That night, the apartment was too quiet. The kind of quiet that hums with everything unsaid. Ethan Cole sat at his desk under the amber glow of a single lamp, scrolling through photos of him and Mia Reynolds. Birthdays, vacations, tiny moments that used to mean forever. Each image felt like it belonged to strangers. From the bathroom came the low rush of water. Mia's laughter, once spontaneous, now sounded rehearsed. She stepped out, auburn hair damp against her bare shoulders, towel knotted around her. Her phone never left her hand. "Long day?" she asked, voice soft, almost kind. He nodded. She smiled, but her eyes darted to the screen. When she turned, her reflection in the mirror flickered with a grin too small and secret to share. That was the moment Ethan realized love could hide inside a lie and still sound like comfort. The next morning, Ethan told himself the cafe across from Mia's office just had better coffee. He sat by the window, laptop unopened, pretending to read the news while his eyes searched through glass and reflection. Inside the lobby opposite, Mia stood beside Nathan Hayes, her boss. They were laughing. Easy, familiar. The kind of laughter that used to belong to him. The world outside kept moving. Buses groaned. Horns sang. People hurried to work. Ethan's coffee went cold in his hands. For a moment, he thought she looked up, but the glass held only his own face staring back, the expression of a man trying not to understand. That evening, the illusion returned. Dinner with friends, clinking glasses, shared jokes. From the outside, Ethan and Mia looked perfect again. She leaned into his shoulder, laughed at all the right times, and every touch was choreographed tenderness. Clara Jensen, their longtime friend, teased Mia about office crushes. Mia laughed too loud. Ethan noticed the flicker. The way her eyes darted toward the table. The way her hand tightened on her glass. When the laughter died, he reached for her hand. She let him hold it, but didn't squeeze back. On the drive home, the only sound was the hum of the tires, and her soft sighs that could have been regret or relief. Rain whispered against the window that night. Ethan lay awake beside Maya, listening to her steady breathing. Her phone rested face down on the nightstand, its dark screen pulsing once with a muted notification before fading. The room smelled faintly of her perfume, the same scent that used to make him feel chosen. He turned toward her, watched the rise and fall of her shoulders, and felt a strange ache, a longing for a version of her that no longer existed. She shifted closer, draping an arm across him in sleep. He closed his eyes, pretending it meant something. Outside, thunder rolled low, like a warning only he could hear. Ethan Cole tried to bury the unease in routine. He told himself the long hours, the skipped dinners, the polite distance were just the weight of adulthood. But every time his phone buzzed without her reply, a sharp pulse of doubt returned. One evening, working late in the Smollett lab, he heard the faint ding of an email on Mia Reynolds' laptop. She had left it on their shared desk from the weekend. The subject line was harmless. Client recap, Nathan H. Still, something about the tone of that initial half-visible line drew his eye. He hesitated. Hands cold, heart heavy with that quiet permission. Heartbreak gives to curiosity. When he opened it, the message was nothing explicit, just warmth between words, a familiarity too intimate for work. He closed the screen fast, but the seed was planted. Silence would no longer protect him. The next day, Ethan Cole pretended everything was normal. He made her coffee, packed her lunch, kissed her cheek. She smiled as if routine could erase suspicion. But when she left, he stayed home. Working remote, the words tasting like deceit in his own mouth. Hours passed before her phone, forgotten on the counter, lit up with a message preview. Nathan Hayes. Lunch at the usual spot? The words were plain, but the ache they left wasn't. Ethan didn't open it. He didn't need to. The phrase usual spot sounded too practiced, too familiar. He sat back in his chair, listening to the tick of the kitchen clock, and realizing he wasn't the only one keeping secrets now. The trust between them had become a fragile performance, both of them playing characters who no longer believed their lines. By midweek, Ethan Cole stopped pretending. His messages to Mia Reynolds went unanswered until evening. Her replies came trimmed and delayed, full of polite warmth and no detail. At work, he caught himself rereading them, looking for emotion between punctuation marks. When she finally came home, he watched from the couch as she changed into loungewear, humming to herself. "Rode?" she asked without looking up. He nodded. She smiled, distracted, phone in hand again. A small laugh escaped her at something on the screen, one she didn't share with him. That sound, once the reason he fell in love, now carried the weight of another man's presence. Ethan didn't ask. He simply memorized the silence that followed. Friday arrived with a chill. Ethan stopped by Maya's office unannounced, holding a bouquet of lilies, the kind she used to love. He waited in the lobby, watching the elevator numbers crawl down. When the doors opened, she stepped out laughing beside Nathan Hayes. They both froze when they saw him. "Ethan," she said, her voice thin. Nathan extended a practiced handshake, all professionalism. Ethan smiled, offering the flowers. "Thought I'd surprise you." The petals trembled slightly in his grip. She thanked him, voice low. As he left, the reflection in the glass doors showed Mia turning to Nathan, their faces tightening into worry. Surprises, he realized, only worked when trust was still alive. That night, the storm finally broke. Rain hammered the windows as Ethan sat alone in their kitchen, the lilies drooping in a vase between them. Mia came in late, makeup slightly smudged, claiming an emergency meeting. He only nodded. She started to speak but stopped, seeing the flowers, the untouched dinner, his calm eyes. "We need to talk," she whispered. He stood, walked past her, and said quietly, "Not yet." When the door to their bedroom closed, the echo of his footsteps lingered. Outside, lightning flashed white across the skyline. Brief illumination before darkness returned. The following week, Ethan Cole noticed that truth doesn't arrive with noise. It comes quietly, like dust settling after a storm. He sat at his desk late one night, the apartment still except for the hum of his computer. He wasn't searching for proof, only closure. But the moment his mouse hovered over an unfamiliar folder, labeled archive, his pulse betrayed him. Inside were photographs from company retreats, smiling faces, and then one image that changed the air. Mia Reynolds leaned too close to Nathan Hayes, her laughter frozen mid-frame. Ethan stared until the glow blurred. It wasn't the picture that hurt. It was how ordinary it looked, how easily betrayal fit into daylight. Morning blurred into gray. Ethan walked to work through drizzle, headphones in but no music playing. Every reflection in a shop window showed the same face. His pretending composure. At the office, Clara Jensen greeted him with her usual warmth, but one look at him and her smile faltered. "You okay?" she asked. He nodded, lied. Later, over coffee, he almost told her. Almost asked what she'd do if love turned into evidence. Instead, he said, "Some files you can't unsee." She didn't understand, but she heard the ache. That evening, he couldn't stay still. He opened Mia's laptop again, the same one that had become a border between them. He told himself he just wanted to understand when it began. Instead of emails or words, he found photos of corporate events, Tiny gestures, glances, her hand resting too near Nathan's. Each picture layered into a story that needed no dialogue. The realization didn't break him, it hollowed him. He closed the laptop, folded his hands, and sat in the dark until the hum of the city became unbearable. When Mia came home late, the air felt heavy with things unsaid. She set down her purse, eyes flicking toward him, reading the silence like a confession. "What's wrong?" she asked. But the tremor in her voice betrayed that she already knew. He simply said, "Nothing that wasn't already." The pause stretched until the ticking clock became unbearable. She stepped closer, guilt softening her features, but he turned away. Some truths, he realized, demanded distance to survive the night. Later that night, Ethan stood by the window, watching the city flicker beneath him. Behind him, the apartment slept. One room, two ghosts. He knew he could confront her, demand the story in full, but something quieter anchored him. He realized the discovery wasn't about catching her. It was about seeing himself, how far love could stretch before breaking. When the first light of dawn crept through the blinds, he whispered to the empty glass, "I know." It was enough. The night the truth finally cracked open, the apartment felt too small for their silence. Ethan Cole waited in the dim kitchen, hands around a mug, gone cold. When Mia Reynolds came in, her voice was soft. "You're still up?" As if the question could erase what he already knew. He didn't answer right away. He just looked at her, really looked, and saw the distance she carried home with her every night. "How long?" he asked at last. The words were steady, too calm to sound angry. She froze, keys clattering to the floor, eyes wide before the practiced denial formed. "Ethan, it's not..." He stopped her with a small shake of his head. "Please, just don't." The air between them thickened until even breathing felt like betrayal. For a moment, neither spoke. The refrigerator hummed. Rain whispered at the window. Then Mia whispered, "I didn't mean to hurt you." The apology trembled, half truth and half wish. Ethan turned toward her slowly, eyes glassy but dry. "You meant everything you did," he said quietly. "You just didn't think it would find daylight." She tried to step closer, but he backed away. The distance felt irreversible now, a geography carved by choices. When she reached for him, he flinched, not from anger, but from the sudden weight of knowing the woman before him was a stranger wearing her face. He walked past her into the living room, each step measured like punctuation in an argument he didn't want to have. "Was it worth it?" he asked, voice low. Mia followed, tears cutting faint lines through her foundation. "I felt invisible," she said. "He saw me." Ethan almost laughed, the sound cracked and hollow. "And I didn't," she shook her head. "You stopped looking." The honesty stung more than the betrayal itself. They stood there, two truths colliding, neither strong enough to fix what broke them. The conversation disintegrated into silence. Mia sank to the couch, face buried in her hands. Ethan stayed standing, fingers pressed against his temple as if to stop the noise inside. "I wish I could take it back," she said. "You can't," he replied. She looked up, searching his eyes for softness, but found only fatigue. "Then what happens now?" He sighed, the sound small but final. "Now, we live with what we chose." The clock ticked. Outside, thunder rolled. Love, he realized, doesn't end with hate. It ends when even shouting feels pointless. Later, Ethan lay awake on the couch, while the first pale light of dawn crept across the walls. The apartment was quiet, except for her muffled sobs from the bedroom. He didn't move to comfort her. Compassion felt like reopening a wound. Instead, he stared at the ceiling, the patterns of light shifting with every passing car. Somewhere between exhaustion and grief, he whispered to himself, "It's over," not as a declaration, but as a prayer. A week passed, and the silence between Ethan Cole and Mia Reynolds hardened into routine. They spoke only of errands, bills, and dinner plans that never happened. But beneath Ethan's calm was resolve. He had spent nights staring at the city from his desk, wondering what justice looked like without cruelty. On Friday morning, he drafted an email, not to humiliate, but to illuminate. It was a report of professional misconduct, factual, clinical, free of anger. He didn't need vengeance. He needed truth on record. When he hit send, the click was quiet, but inside him, something uncoiled. By afternoon, whispers had started to move through the office corridors. Mia's phone buzzed repeatedly with messages. She didn't answer. When Ethan came home, she was already waiting. Eyes red, voice frayed. "Did you do something?" she asked. He didn't lie. "I told the truth," he said simply. "Nothing more." She sank onto the couch, clutching her phone. "You've ruined everything." Ethan shook his head. "No," he murmured. "I just stopped protecting what was already broken." That evening, Ethan walked the city streets alone. The air smelled of rain and exhaust, the rhythm of traffic drowning out thought. He passed buildings that once meant something. Restaurants, stores, corners marked by memory, and felt nothing. It wasn't satisfaction. It was release. He had spent months fighting ghosts, and now they were gone, replaced by quiet clarity. The city didn't care who betrayed whom. It pulsed, alive, indifferent, and somehow that indifference was mercy. Days later, Mia Reynolds came home to find Ethan packing a single suitcase. "Where will you go?" she asked quietly. "Somewhere quiet," he replied. She reached for him, eyes pleading. "I never meant for it to end like this." He paused, closing the suitcase with deliberate care. "It didn't end," he said. "It just became something else." She nodded, tears streaking her cheeks, understanding that forgiveness wasn't coming. But neither was hatred. When Ethan closed the apartment door behind him, it wasn't revenge he felt. It was gravity. The world outside was sharp with autumn air. The city hummed familiar and forgiving. He walked without looking back, suitcase rolling over the cracked pavement. Somewhere behind him, Mia sat alone, learning what it meant to live inside consequence. For Ethan, the truth had done what anger couldn't. It set him free. News moved faster than anyone expected. Within days, the company issued statements, meetings were canceled, and faces turned away in corridors. Ethan Cole watched it unfold from afar, detached, like a spectator in someone else's tragedy. Mia Reynolds stopped going to work. The calls that once filled her phone went silent. One night she appeared at his new apartment door, eyes swollen, voice barely there. "They let him go," she whispered, meaning Nathan Hayes. Ethan only nodded. "So did I." It wasn't cruelty. It was the sound of a man who had nothing left to lose. They sat at the small kitchen table, 2 mugs between them, steam curling like ghosts. "I lost everything," she said. Ethan traced a finger along the rim of his cup. "Not everything," he replied. "You still have the truth." She met his eyes, searching for bitterness, but found exhaustion instead. The silence that followed was gentler than before, an ending that didn't demand forgiveness, only acknowledgement. Days passed quietly. Ethan began running again in the mornings, headphones filling the silence with steady rhythm. Each stride loosened something inside him. He didn't think about the past as much. He thought about breathing, motion, survival. On one run, he passed Mia on the opposite sidewalk. She in plain clothes, carrying groceries, head down. They exchanged a glance that carried more understanding than any words could have. Then they kept walking, each into their own future. Back at work, Clara Jensen greeted Ethan with a cautious smile. "You look better," she said. "I'm lighter," he answered. Over lunch, she asked if he regretted anything. He thought for a long time before shaking his head. "No, I just wish I'd learned sooner that love isn't proof of goodness. It's a risk we take." Clara nodded. The kind of understanding that doesn't need details. For the first time in months, he laughed, soft and real. That evening, Ethan stood on his balcony as dusk settled, the city humming below. He thought about Mia, about Nathan, about the wreckage and the calm that followed. Regret felt smaller now, replaced by something steadier. Gratitude for the chance to begin again. In the distance, the first stars appeared over the skyline. He closed his eyes and let the wind pass through him, carrying away what little anger remained. Months later, autumn had softened into early winter. Ethan Cole found himself in the same cafe where everything had once begun, the place across from Mia Reynolds' office. Only now the corner table was just a table, and the window no longer framed ghosts. He stirred his coffee absently, realizing how still his hands had become. Outside, the city moved as it always had, but this time he wasn't watching for her. For the first time, he was simply present. He spent his days differently now. Long walks, small dinners with Clara Jensen, laughter that didn't feel forced. One evening, she asked, "Do you think you'll ever love again?" Ethan smiled faintly. "I think I already do. Just differently." She didn't press. They finished their wine in comfortable silence, the kind that only grows between people who have earned peace. One rainy afternoon, Ethan received a letter in familiar handwriting. Mia Reynolds' words were careful, measured, and full of remorse. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She only wrote, "I hope you're finding peace. You deserved it more than I did." He read it twice, then folded it neatly and slipped it into a drawer. There was no bitterness left, only quiet understanding. Some stories, he realized, don't end with closure. They end when they stop needing one. That night, Ethan dreamed of the sea. In the dream, he stood barefoot on a quiet shore, the tide washing over footprints that dissolved before they could fade. When he woke, he opened his window and breathed in the chill of dawn. The world was quiet and wide again. He wasn't healed completely, but he was free of the weight that once made healing impossible. Later that morning, Ethan walked through the park, hands in his coat pockets, the sun low and kind. Children played near the fountain. Leaves circled in slow spirals across the path. He stopped near a bench and watched the water catch the light. For the first time in a long time, he smiled, without remembering why it used to hurt. The story was over, not because he'd won, but because he'd survived it.